you've probably experienced this where you know there's like a thing that you want to accomplish. You know exactly what needs to be done, and you don't do it. Or you set a goal for yourself, and it's just a matter of doing it every day for 30 days, and on day 6, you stop. And we've all had that experience. And that is not a lack of clarity or a lack of intelligence. Everybody knows exactly what they were supposed to do, but they didn't do it. And so I'm obsessed recently with asking the question of why? Why didn't I do it? What stopped me? How did I stop myself, more accurately?
What's up, you beautiful and handsome damn givers? Welcome to Let's Give a Damn. I'm Nick Lapara, and this podcast is your one-stop shop for all the encouragement and inspiration you'll need to give more damns than ever before. I hope you're doing well. My guest today on the podcast is an incredible young man, Enis Cirak. Enis and I met about a year ago, and I love hanging out with this dude. We hang out every month or so, drinking tea, as I note and we note in the podcast. He is a thoughtful, smart, peaceful, passionate young man, and he definitely gives a damn. Enis, with his co-founders, launched Gigamunch, a Nashville-based company that prepares a new meal each week for you from a different country, and they deliver it to your door, fully cooked and ready to go. My family and I have eaten their meals, and they are amazing. The meal I remember eating was from Budapest, Hungary. It was so delicious, and they throw in a few components to that meal that you'll never get from Blue Apron or HelloFresh or any of the others out there. This is a completely new and amazing experience. And what I love about this company is that exposure begets empathy. Exposure begets empathy. It creates empathy, and we all need to harness more empathy in our lives. And the reality is, so many people can't or won't travel as much as they'd like to for a million reasons. So Gigamunch brings the world to you in your dining room. It's a win-win for everyone. But we don't talk about food the entire time in this conversation. His story is amazing, and he shares great tips and wisdom for how to get healthy and stay healthy in this crazy, crazy world of ours. This is a great conversation, friends. So let's get right into it. Here's my conversation with Enis Cirak. Welcome to the podcast, Enis.
Dude, thank you. I'm
my
honored.
brother.
Yeah.
I was trying to think as I prepared for this, as I came and set everything up, like how we met, and I cannot for the life of me remember. Do you remember?
Oh my God. As soon as you said that, it just left.
We've been chatting and getting tea together for a couple years now.
Yeah.
But I don't remember how we actually met.
I have no memory of it whatsoever. I feel like you sent me an email randomly one day, and then you were like,
I mean, I do send random emails
Yeah.
every day to people and
Yeah.
want to connect. But who would have told me about you?
I have no
don't
idea.
know.
I have no
Someone
idea.
told me about you. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Somebody said you need to meet Enis, and so I
remember
emailed
getting
you.
an email and watching your TEDx talk and
Okay.
thinking, oh man, I'm going to love this guy.
Okay.
I'm so glad he reached out.
Well, that's good. That is great. That makes me feel really good. But yeah, so we've known each other for at least a year and a half.
Yeah.
We've been getting tea every month or two at High Garden here in
Yeah.
Nashville, and I like you a lot.
Thank you.
And I like what you're doing. And so we've also been putting off this podcast for some reason or another for quite some time. I've really wanted to hear more about your story. I mean, I remember you telling me your story, but I want to hear it and share it with the Let's Give a Damn family. So to begin, what's your story? Tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly. Go as short or as long as you want to.
Okay.
But give me some context for when we get into your work and why you're here in Nashville and all that sort of stuff. Give us some context for that.
I answer that question differently every time I'm asked because I feel in a different place every time that I'm asked. And so the way that I feel right now, there's a desire to make a distinction between the things that have happened to me and my current situation and where I'm speaking from. So in terms of the things that have happened to me, I was born in Bosnia. I was a refugee and came to the United States at the age of 5. I learned English pretty fast. I became kind of like the translator guy for my family. And we, my dad was a trucker. My mom was worked at David's Bridal doing like a seamstress. And they never really learned English that well, but they did it enough to get by. My brother also became a trucker. It's just a lot of Bosnians are actually truckers because it's really easy. There's not an education gap or barrier.
And you don't have to speak a lot to do it.
Exactly.
You just drive for 12 hours a day.
Exactly. We have a funny story. Like one of my uncles, he's also a trucker, and he likes to get early to the loading station, and that's usually the worst part of the job because you have to wait for a while. And so he has this thing that he does where he's like, "Hello, here for delivery," and they're like, "Yeah, man, you just it says 12 p.m. here. It's 7 a.m. You just gotta wait 5 hours." He's like, "Okay, yeah, here for delivery." And he just keeps repeating it until they get so frustrated.
Until they do it.
They just let him in.
Yeah.
But
I like that.
anyways, so family of truckers. I went to Tennessee Tech University and studied chemical engineering. And the reason I did that is because I loved math and science, and I wanted to really get into solar energy in particular. I saw solar energy and I still do, as this really natural way of easing conflict, because I think a lot of conflict is based around scarce resources. And I think over the next 5 to 10 years, we can see solar energy come to a point of efficiency to where we can really have it everywhere and producing a lot of energy and at a cost that is cheaper than fossil fuels. Yeah. So I see that as an inevitable thing that will reduce a lot of conflict. So I wanted to get into that. But as I really went deeply into what being a chemical engineer meant, I saw that it wasn't for me. And so around that time, I fell in love with entrepreneurship. And so that's like a snapshot of what's happened in my background up until entrepreneurship.
Yeah. A couple questions.
Yeah.
Can I butt in there?
Yeah, please.
So what's different about you? So trucker, David's Bridal seamstress, and someone that wanted to be a chemical engineer and did, I think, probably even a harder thing and just wanted to become an entrepreneur. What was different about you? I'm in no way comparing you to your family members. I'm just saying, what was it about you and your personality that chose a harder thing? You had to learn English. You had to put yourself out there. You have had to put yourself out there in so many ways over the last few years, things that your family haven't had to do and won't have to do if they keep, current job trajectory.
I think it was one, more opportunity. Like they came in, they were starting life restarting life at 40. So they come in to the United States with $500 in their pocket, no
Sure.
English. So they're starting from scratch. And they were very resourceful, and they accomplished what they could with what they had. For me, I had just a lot more resources to play with. I had the English language mastered by the time I was 8 years old. I could read and write just as good as anybody. I ended up being able to go to college because of a mix of scholarships and their support. And so for me, it was just, I think they would have done very similar things had they arrived at the United States a little earlier and learned English a little faster. And I think I could have seen both of them.
Yeah, I mean, the
similar
science is really clear.
Yeah.
When you're a kid, you soak it in.
Yeah.
And when you're older, you don't. I mean, the incentive, many of the incentives or the reasons to do it are gone.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
It's just easier to choose a job like trucking where you can just truck
Exactly.
or sew and you don't have to do, much else. Yeah, that makes sense.
To my point earlier, the thing that I said when I first started was I want to make a distinction between the things that happened that sort of led up to this moment and this moment, the way it is, like the situation that I'm in. and like where I'm speaking from. So we all share a very similar essence. I believe that. I believe that we can find ourselves in many, many different situations and come from many different backgrounds. But me as a human being, it's like those things are so surface level. And I think people nowadays are really feeling it more than ever. Like when someone asks you, tell me about yourself. And the impulse, the trained impulse is to say like, your name, what you do, just facts about yourself. And all those things are true, but they don't really, at least for me, they don't feel like representations anymore.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like a description, It's almost like, to give another example, if I describe a genre of music, I can use very detailed descriptions. Like it's indie pop with a 112 beat per second rhythm or blah, blah, blah. But then like you hear the song, you're like, oh, that's what it is.
Yeah. Sure.
But regardless of that, I'm very willing to talk about the description too. So anyways, I got into entrepreneurship, and the reason I got into it was, and so this is funny, you didn't know that I was part of the University Innovation Fellows, but that's like a program that does innovation and entrepreneurship training for students all across the country. And I was very lucky to be part of that program because of a professor who just said, hey, listen, I think you would like this. She encouraged me to sign up, and I did. And they accepted me, and I went to California for this innovation and entrepreneurship training. And every student that I met there was so vibrant and so alive. And everyone there wanted to do something impactful and meaningful. And the culture that they set up was one that encouraged that. They didn't make fun of you or kind of downplay changing the world, because that's, I think in most conversations, when someone says, I want to change the world, there is just like almost like a knee-jerk reaction to make fun of that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Manage your expectations. Not
Yeah.
going to happen. It's people have tried. And
Yeah.
Look where we are. Yeah, totally.
And just seen as naive.
Yep.
And so the culture that I found myself in during that program was the opposite. It was like apathy and not caring was made fun of.
Yeah.
And that was so powerful.
Yeah.
That was such a powerful experience. I was, I think, 19 at the time. And it really left a mark on me. So I thought, this is damn right. We should make fun of apathy.
Yeah.
Why not want to change the world? And so I came back to the campus, really lost interest in chemical engineering at that point. Not to say that is totally an avenue that a lot of people could use to make a lot of effect, but it wasn't for me.
Sure.
And so I saw entrepreneurship as a really powerful, natural way to make change and to inspire people and to do cool things. And I ended up starting a few businesses with friends. The first couple businesses didn't go anywhere. They were just sort of, I use air quotes like businesses because it's like we didn't have a customer. We didn't really get that far with any of the concepts.
Been there, done that. Yeah.
But we were serious about it at the
Sure.
time, and we learned a lot in the whole process of it. But they didn't go anywhere. But the most recent project that we did, Gigamunch, did have some legs and did end up really growing and having at least somewhat of an effect so far. And I think that we're just beginning with it. I think that we are going to see a lot of potential over the next few years. But that was the one project that really took off.
Perfect segue into sort of the next part of your story, which is how I met you. Someone said they connected our need to meet each other over Gigamunch and the impact this business was beginning to have. So tell us about Gigamunch. Why? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? More importantly, and kind of what effect is it having?
Yeah. So the quick story is Gigamunch delivers food from different countries. We are a subscription service that gives you an authentic international meal right to your doorstep. The food is gourmet quality, it's fully prepared, and it's always designed by an immigrant or refugee from that country. And it also comes with music and stories from that country. So that's the quick version of what it is. Why we're doing it is we believe that if we can give people a positive experience, then over time that will open them up. Because if I send you, let's say that you're watching the news and you see something kind of negative about a certain country.
Sure.
And then the next day, you meet someone from that country. It's like the conversations that you can have with that person become clouded by what you know naturally. So we want to simply balance out the information and give you a positive experience. So give you a meal that tastes really good, give you music that sounds amazing, give you a story that's emotionally impactful, give you cultural content that's educational. And we, I'm saying it in a serious tone, but it really is meant to be like a fun, kind of lighthearted thing. And it's meant to show you that, hey, you can, in fact, learn about another country and explore another culture in a fun way, in a lighthearted way, but in a way that's still meaningful. And over time, naturally opens you up, naturally educates you. So a lot of our subscribers, they love doing it for their family's sake. They love getting their kids involved, having their kids exposed to a lot of different perspectives and cultures early on. It's not the same as traveling somewhere.
Right.
I think we will never be able to mimic that experience, but I hope that we can at least give people a glimpse and spark their interest. Because, at this point, we've had people reach out and say, after last night's meal, we were inspired to go to that country. After last night's meal, our daughter had a really interesting conversation with her teacher who is from another country. And so we are already, even though we're small, we're already seeing some of these connections and moments of inspiration happen.
Yeah, you have lots of proof that your concept works. This works. This will inspire people. So, but you're doing this in the South.
Yeah.
And you gave us some indication that there's positive responses. Have there been any negative responses? Or I guess what I'm trying to get at is, you're doing this in a place that's not historically known for wanting ethnic food. I mean, there's some good ethnic food in Nashville, but not that great. But you can find a Cracker Barrel in every corner and, a Southern, like a hot chicken place everywhere and barbecue everywhere. But good ethnic food, not that much, right? And so you're trying to build this really beautiful thing in a place that is not historically known for overall being welcoming to immigrants and refugees. That's not so much in Nashville. Like Nashville's been pretty great toward refugees and immigrants, but just in the South, is what I'm saying. So have you found any challenges building this in the South versus if you were to try to build it in like Oakland or San Francisco or LA or New York or these other places where they're by and large open arms to ideas like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I have seen people from all walks of life have a lot of interest in this. And I think it's partly because we've done a good job of framing it in a way that's not super threatening. We're again, like it's all coming from a very fun, lighthearted place of, hey, come try this out. Come explore a different culture with us. The food that we serve is authentic and is designed by people from each country to be representative, but at the same time, the ingredients that we work with are ingredients that are universal, global. You know, we do serve chicken and rice, and we do season it with salt and pepper, and there's salads that have tomatoes and cucumbers. You know, the base things that you can do with food really, I have found for us, they use a lot of common elements, but they are expressed differently, much like people, much like fashion, much
Sure.
like many things. Like the basic things are recognizable, and the expression is infinite. And so when we really explain that to people, like, we're not serving them, you know, camel toes.
Right.
We're not serving them like any, you know, crazy weird ingredient.
Yep.
We're giving them something that's super authentic.
This is a very easy first
Yeah.
step for them to
Yeah.
kind of break out of
Yeah.
the shell.
And I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about international food, because what people see on TV is the weird ingredients. You know, they see all this like really weird stuff on TV because it gets viewers. But the reality of most of the cuisines that we've come across is people are there. It's not that crazy. You know, like the things that people eat on a family in Vietnam on a Tuesday evening is not going to eat something that crazy. They're going to have chicken, rice,
Vegetables,
you know,
yeah.
vegetables.
Yep.
They're not going to have something like that you would normally see on these like shocking TV shows. And so, you know, part of it is just having that shared experience. So it's like once you get the meal, you're like, oh, this is amazing. This is what they eat. And it is unique. It is different. You know, it's not, there's a balance. Like what I just said in the first part of that conversation was like, oh, it's not that crazy. But it's also not the same thing. It's also something pretty different. And when I talk in those two extremes of like, oh, it is different and you haven't had it before, but
Yeah.
it's not crazy and it's not something you've seen on TV.
Yep.
You know, people have a hard time balancing that paradox. But once they get the food, they're like, oh, this is really cool. This is really neat. This is just an authentic experience from that culture.
Yeah, my family and I have eaten food from Gigamunch, and it's wonderful. The whole experience is wonderful. The pulling out the playlists and reading my kids the pamphlet that comes with it, with, you know, details and things about the country, everything. It's just a really, really beautiful experience. And so if people are used to, you know, getting their meal right from Blue Apron or HelloFresh, like this is something completely different and next level. Really. Let's talk about people for a second. And this is still with your with the business with Gigamunch, but on your LinkedIn, as you're describing who you are and what you do, you say, I believe that the world is a beautiful place, and by diving into new perspectives, we can increase our appreciation and understanding of each other.
Yeah.
So why food? So that's true, right? And we need that perspective. If I didn't know you at all, I would learn a lot about you from just that statement there. Right from the get-go, you're somebody that sees, when you walk into a situation, maybe not every time, but you see the positive side of things, right? Because one could easily say the world's pretty fucked up and I'm just trying to, like, you know, make it a better place. That's not how you framed it. You framed it with, I believe the world is a beautiful place, and by diving into new perspectives, we increase our appreciation for each other, right? It's the classic exposure creates empathy, right? You can think that you hate something or someone, whether it's food or a person, because of their religious background. But when you meet them, you're like, whoa, you're not what I thought you'd be. You don't interact the way that I thought you would.
Yeah.
You're totally different. So based on that statement, like, why did you choose, why food? Why are you trying to bring people together over food? Why not some other thing?
I love the way you expressed that, like just what you just said about it's always not what you thought it would be. You know, that's so true. People, and myself included, we live through ideas. So we have this idea of everything. Like when we're about to have lunch with someone, when we're driving to the coffee shop, the image of that person, and like in our head, we're like, I'm gonna have tea with Tim, and like Tim is this imaginary, very like diluted concept in your
Yep.
mind, and then when you sit down to actually meet with
Have
Tim,
tea with
you're
Tim.
like, oh, this is nothing
Yep.
like what I thought it would be.
Yep.
And same thing is true for cultures, other traditions, other perspectives, other people, food. It's true for everything that the expectation is different from the reality of it. And I have found that fear and misunderstanding and conflict happen when people live through the idea too much and don't have exposure to the reality of something. And so for us, it's like, well, what if we just gave people that experience in a fun way? Because I have lived that experience through travel. All the co-founders and I have all had a huge influence from traveling and seeing new perspectives and being immersed in different cultures. So really, this whole business of Gigamunch is really just trying to capture the experience of travel in a way that's more accessible. And that's why we believe like when you're traveling, some of the most important things that you encounter are people, food, and music. So we want to share the stories of people. We want to give you the food of that country and the music of it. And for us, it's just super simple, super accessible way to kind of glimpse that culture. It does start with the people. I think that the stories that we share, the people that we feature, putting a real face to something, and then giving people that imprint, I think helps humanize. It helps normalize.
Absolutely.
It helps just give people a more. It just gets them out of their head. Like whatever concept they were living through, erases it.
I can't remember from the meal that we got. Do you guys share the face of the chef of the week?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so you can see, we like to have a picture of them. It's like usually we try to have a picture of them holding the plate of food that they designed. So it's almost like just by seeing that, it's like mimicking the feeling of like if they were to invite you into their home and serve you dinner.
This is what they
Tell
look
you-
like right before
Right.
you get it.
Right. And I think that experience, again, it's like it's not going to be able to be the same as travel, but I think it's a glimpse. I think it's like a good introduction to it.
There's been studies done about restaurants that have open kitchen concept, right? Because there's these horror stories about what happens in kitchens, right? And put all that aside, you feel much better when you can see
Yeah.
the chef or the sous chef or the people in there preparing your meal. Gives you more confidence to know that they're right there. If I have a problem, I know who to go to, versus this kind of behind the wall thing. And so you're trying to provide that even though people are coming home from work and finding the Gigamunch bag on their doorstep. They're not eating at a restaurant, or they're not going to, Bosnia or Croatia or Egypt or wherever. You're giving them the next best thing. What are some of the countries that, it's like, think the upcoming weeks or last few weeks, just to give people an idea of where.
So we have featured over almost, I think, 50 cultures at this point.
It's crazy.
We've got South Korea coming up, and then Bolivia after that, and then South Africa, and then Syria. We did Bosnia recently, actually. We try to get cultures from all over the world. We've really done a good job of representing that variety, because we try to get as the weeks go by, we try to do cultures that are quite different from each other. So like if one week we did Bolivia, the next week we might want to do Sudan.
Sure.
If one
Totally
week,
different part of the world.
Yeah. And it's crazy. Like, you probably know, there's 120 languages spoken in Nashville. So there's just
Wild.
like a crazy amount of culture in our own backyard. And I think that the truth is people have the desire to dive in to other cultures and other foods and to other perspectives. But the activation energy, the barrier to entry can be high sometimes. And so if you've got a lot going on with your job, with your side projects, with the family, it's hard to make time even for like exercise and meditation, let alone these other things. So we just try to make it easy. We just want to say, okay, we know that you have good intentions to explore the world, to widen your perspective, to make contact with the community as a whole. We're going to make it easy for you. And that's really it.
The co-founders, your
Yeah.
co-founders, are they also refugee immigrant background, or are they American?
2 of them are from
birth.
India,
Okay.
and one of them is born in Tennessee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a good mix. It's a really beautiful mix there. That's really cool. So thank you. I don't want to spend the whole time on Gigamunch, but I
Yeah.
did want to highlight that for anybody listening that wants to be part of it, you have to be in Nashville to partake of it right now. But you can also, I don't know, encourage all of your Nashville friends to partake so that they can be off to the races and get into more cities, right?
Yeah.
That'd be wonderful. Let's talk about you for a little bit. So we talked about Gigamunch. We got some of your story. I want to learn from you, the Enis, the damn giver, because I've really enjoyed getting to know you're a very thoughtful person. You lived life very intentionally. I don't see too many haphazard things happening, in your life, because you just pretty intentionally, map things out. And so I want people that are listening to learn from you. Not saying you're perfect or the expert in all things, but you're learning things right now about how to build a profitable business, or try to, that also serves people in so many ways, serves their stomachs, their bellies. They're becoming, they're being sustained through your business, but they're also their perspectives, their worldview, everything's just opening up for them. So starting a business is not easy. I know this because we've talked. People listening don't know this yet, but it's been hard. It's hard to find the money, the time, the energy, the people, the customers, all of that. How do you stay healthy? How do you get the strength to keep going? And it can be anything, whatever comes to mind, emotional things you do for yourself, physical things you do for yourself. How do you stay healthy in this great journey that you're on?
For me, it's been the great blessing to start with good friends and have a really strong team. I cannot imagine doing half the stuff we've done if I was trying to do it solo. I think there's a lot of projects out there that are more conducive to like solo work, but I'm of the mentality that the really great things to accomplish nowadays can only happen in a team. And so for me, first and foremost, having a team that I can rely on and friends that I can go to and an amazing girlfriend that I can have fun with. It's that community of people that I think provide the necessary support for me. And so, if someone's thinking of like starting a business, I would say really think about who can you partner with to make it that much more likely that it'll succeed. What relationships do you need to get in order for you to even be of stable mind and spirit to be able to focus on something like a business for a long time? So for me, it starts with relationships and people. From there, I think meditation is just a given. If you're not meditating or doing something that has a similar effect, such as yoga or intentional exercise, or I don't know, the multitude of weird, like cold showers, for example, Wim Hof and his whole
Yes.
thing,
Do you do the cold showers?
I tried it when
I do the cold showers
Yeah.
as much as I can.
yeah, as much as I
Pretty
can.
fucking hard sometimes, but it's very helpful. Anyway, didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
but,
you're good. I think
But yeah, those things really help.
you got to have like something like that to sort of basically when the mind gets too stimulated and active, you got to have something that refreshes it. Because like we do that all the time with our phones. Like once there are too many tabs, you kind of clear it. Could you imagine if like you went a whole week without turning off your phone or clearing a single tab, it would just be ridiculously slow and overheated.
Yep.
And that's what most of us feel throughout the day now. We feel slow and overheated. If you can take the time to reset, you will feel much better.
It's funny you just said that. It's so spot on. The browser on my laptop just yesterday, for multiple tabs in a row, it had a bar across the top in Safari that said, the performance on your computer is not performing in the way that it could.
Right.
If you shut this tab down, it will. Shut the frickin' tab, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you have too many tabs open.
Yeah.
And I went and I scrolled through and I had like 25 tabs open because I'm just working. I'm just like plugging along and hustling. And it was reminding me, hey, if you're noticing that when you open the next tab or go to the next thing and it's not functioning well. And I was noticing that. I was frustrated. I was like, why is my computer? Is it the internet? And I'm getting frustrated. And my computer reminded me it's you. Like you're doing this. Like if you want this computer to do what you want it to do, shut some tabs, dude.
Yeah.
And so many times in life, we don't function that way. We think we can be on our phones all day, then on our computers, and then plop down in front of this screen every night and watch 3 hours of you think you're relaxing. Your mind's going. Your mind is, everything's firing and just everything's going off because you're taking in all these visuals and the sound and everything. The last thing you're doing is relaxing. If you want to relax, read a book, meditate, go exercise. Like that's going to actually do stuff for your body. Don't think that by plopping down for another movie on another night, you're not relaxing. Everything's going. Your emotions, your body, so those are good.
Yeah.
Good suggestions.
Have you ever read the book Deep Work?
Yeah, Cal Newport.
So a lot of gems in that book, but one of my favorite things that I got out of it was the fact that when you're doing something, there is like not a clear slate every time you switch to a new task. Like when we switch to a new tab, we only see what's on that tab. But when I go from conversation 1 to conversation 2, I'm actually still thinking about conversation 1 while I'm talking with the second person. So it may not seem like that, like consciously, but subconsciously, it takes like a good hour to refocus. Like, you know what I mean by that?
Yeah. No, totally. What does he recommend doing? Like,
Well,
do you not schedule things back to back, or how do you?
Yes, actually, yes. That's his whole thing.
Because you don't think you're doing it,
right?
But you totally are.
Like, if you give yourself, like, say, I know it's hard for like most people to even attempt to do this, but it's like if you can do something. The irony of this book is like the people who need it most could never read it because it's like long and boring.
Yeah, you just described Cal Newport in a sentence, long and boring.
Yeah,
but it's very ironic.
So, anyways, to give a shortened version of it is if you can be patient with yourself, do something for 3 hours and just expect to be not in the mood for the first like 45 minutes and expect the first 45 minutes to kind of suck and to feel brain fog and to, not be in the zone. But if you can keep with it for like 45 minutes to an hour, when you hit that hour mark, it'll feel like your brain lit up. It'll feel like you had a cup of coffee, even though you didn't, because now the focus is 100% aligned on that one task.
Who inspires you? Who inspires you to keep going?
I have a lot of inspirations. I have a lot of mentors and books and people who I go to just sort of remind myself.
Yeah. Well, go for it. Teach us, Sensei.
In the theme of like happiness, I'm very motivated by certain spiritual teachers. I'll just name like Eckhart Tolle, Adyashanti, Mooji, Sadhguru, Rupert Spira. All 5 of these guys are incredible. You can look up any of their YouTube videos for an otherworldly amount of wisdom. In terms of health, I love Mark Hyman. I love Rich Roll. I love people who, even like people like Tim Ferriss, who are just kind of open-minded and experimenting with like what works in terms of finance and like productivity stuff and goal setting. You ever listen to what's his Tim Bellew and Impact
Oh
Leader?
yeah.
He's really I had just finished a podcast where he was the one being interviewed instead of giving the interview, and his mindset was so helpful to me. The mindset that he gave was basically, if you can identify with being a learner, that gives you a very anti-fragile, resilient mindset. Because let's say that I come up to you and I'm like, hey, you suck at this. If you have the identity of a learner, you're like, tell me more. You lean in. You're not offended by it. You're not slowed down by that. You don't feel like that sort of like that feeling of being attacked when someone's criticizing you. Instead, you're just kind of like, oh, really? Cool. And he had this like really interesting perspective of, when I was a kid, I loved the show Avatar, The Last Airbender. And I loved like books like Aragon and even just any book where
You and my wife should be friends, or your kid self and my wife should be friends.
Yeah. I mean, I love like the feeling of like superheroes and being able to like have a tremendous impact in the world because of like these abilities. And he really broke down like, you can be that.
Yeah.
Like someone who is really good at Photoshop, that's a superpower. Like if you're good at Photoshop, you can create a flyer that gets people to an event.
Yeah.
You can retouch a family photo that gives someone an emotional reaction. You can do things that have a real effect on people.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, okay, in the fantasy world, we think in terms of like the ability to fly and super strength. But like in this world that we live in, the superpowers are like, oh, that guy's really good at communication. Oh, he really knows marketing. Oh, that person, they're able to set a goal and stick to it. Those are the superpowers in this world.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm like, I'm just obsessed with becoming as skilled as possible.
The best version of yourself.
Yeah, the best version possible that can have the most impact. And I'm taking a lot from Tom today in particular, just because I finished his podcast most recently. But he had his definition of power was, because a lot of people are like they have a weird relationship with that word. But for me, and the way he said it, power is simply the extent to which you can change the world. And whatever you do with that is up to you. But I want power to make a positive impact in the world. And so, that part of that is learning skills. Part of that is also diving deep into identity level stuff. Because I think our identity ultimately determines what skills we are open to learning, and to the extent that we will challenge ourselves during the learning process. Because you've probably experienced this where there's like a thing that you want to accomplish. You know exactly what needs to be done, and you don't do it. Or you set a goal for yourself, and it's just a matter of doing it every day for 30 days, and on day 6 you stop. And we've all had that experience. And that is not a lack of clarity or a lack of intelligence. Everybody knows exactly what they were supposed to do, but they didn't do it. And so I'm obsessed recently with asking the question of why? Why didn't I do it? What stopped me? How did I stop myself, more accurately? And so for me, it's like diving into like self-sabotage, diving into limiting beliefs, diving into just a whole host of learned behaviors that are subconscious habits to keep you in a lane. I was driving the other night, and I had this amazing experience where I was driving, and I could see that as I got a little bit into the left side of the lane, my hands would automatically adjust the steering wheel by like a millimeter to go back into the center of the lane. And I was watching this happen over the course of, 10 minutes, it hit me on a deep level. Oh, my subconscious is keeping me in the lane. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not intentionally, doing this. It's just kind of an automatic reaction. And our subconscious does this in many, many areas of our life, not just in the lane that we're driving in, but in your health lane, in your relationships lane, in all sorts of things. There is a upper and lower boundary that you have that is determined by your identity. We identify as someone who is of a certain level of health. If you were to, start to lose weight or start to get ripped, and you're not yet the identity of someone who looks like that, there's going to come a day where you look in the mirror and you see a six pack and you're like, that's not me. And it's not going to be conscious. It's really not. It's just going to be like, consciously you're like, yeah, nice, I have a six pack. Subconsciously you're like, what am I doing in the right lane? I need to go back to the center.
Sure.
And you'll just stop working out, or you'll rationalize like why you did it. But what's really happening there is the reality wasn't matching up with your identity. And so I'm obsessed with that recently as well.
It's a good thing to be obsessed with.
Yeah.
Because living an intentional life is everything. It really is. Like, coasting through life is for the birds, man. But so many people are doing it. They're just coasting. They're living in that subconsciousness where they're just letting life. I mean, I've done that before. To kind of borrow from your experience, like driving for miles and not even realizing that, like, I got from A to B, which is fine, except for there's other cars on the road. And like, how did I brake? How did I know when to brake and when to accelerate? But that's neither here nor there. The point is that, like, you get through this experience, you're like, holy shit, like, I just went 4 miles.
Yeah.
I don't know how I got here.
Yeah.
You don't realize that you're, moving your hand on the steering wheel 1 millimeter to keep yourself in that lane. It just happens.
It just happens.
And that's when life is lived that way. We miss so much. You miss so much. You don't get to fully experience, because there's so many opportunities coming your way. So many people that you have to meet that day, right? So many people that you should have met, but you were coasting. You were in your subconscious. So many just missed opportunities. Maybe your next career, your next person that you need to help, serve, love, take care of, your next partner, your spouse, like, not your next spouse, hopefully, but like your spouse, like, all these things are happening around us. I mean, that's the life of the damn giver right there, is someone who does care so intensely and intimately about getting out of that, just living on autopilot, just going,
Yeah. The autopilot. That's like the perfect word for it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're living life on autopilot. And the autopilot has been programmed by your environment in the past however many years. Predominantly your parents, your early friends, the media that you took in at a young age. That's probably like the biggest, program in there. And, very similar to when I was in that lane, I started to like really play with it. And I thought to myself, if I want to get into the right lane right now, I have to manually override this, like, this urge to stay in my lane. And so, very similar to that, we have to override those habits, those inclinations. However, I think recently I've been noticing that people are getting really frustrated with that game, because they know that they have these bad habits. They know that they have these tendencies, and they're doing their best to override them. But in the long run, they're just unable to really be consistent with it. And so recently I've started to feel like it's not a matter of, beating your subconscious every day. It's just really more of identifying the program in the beginning, and then really getting rid of it to where, there's no reason why you shouldn't be naturally inclined to eat healthy. There's no reason why you shouldn't naturally be inclined to whatever, and just sort of making it easy on yourself and saying like, hey, instead of forcing myself through willpower to do something or to give up a certain habit, it's like looking at the deeper reason of like, why is this so tough? Why is it that other people don't have this issue? Why are like, because not everyone, I don't have to exert willpower to, you know, not take certain drugs every day.
Right.
But to the drug addict, it's like, oh, they really do. They have to have a lot of willpower to not do whatever drug that day. And so there's a lot of obviously complicated reasons there of what causes drug addiction and what keeps it sustained and the chemistry of it and all that. But the point being is just kind of looking around and asking like, who is not struggling with this? And what identity did they have? What can I do to kind of dive into their perspective a bit, and take on what comes so naturally to that person?
Yeah. No, it's super helpful. And I'm actually glad you brought up Tom Bilyeu, because Tom's a perfect example of that. If you know his story, and for those of you who are listening that don't know his story, go, because you might think, oh, well, I'm predisposed. You know, you a few minutes ago mentioned like so much of our ideas come from our parents and our where we came from and all that stuff, right? But and that's fine. That's we can't change. I can't change where I came from, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But you don't have to stay there, right? So you've got Tom Bilyeu living in Tacoma, Washington, growing up, and he, you know, very unhealthy. I mean, overweight, just not living his best life. And he could have stayed there. He could have stayed there. He could have stayed in that state, or maybe improved a little bit. You might if you go look at Tom's Instagram right now, he's super fit. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, got the beautiful wife, got the stuff. He was at the Oscars last week. But that wasn't always it. He was fat Tom Bilyeu that wasn't happy with himself.
Yeah.
And then he made these changes. He did the hard work. He started Quest Nutrition, became a $1 billion company. And now Tom is who he is today, inspiring people. And so I think it's easy to look and be like, oh, Tom had it made. Tom didn't have it made. Tom had everything going against him. He was stuck. He was stuck in these unhealthy habits and patterns. But he decided really intentionally to break out of the autopilot, to get out of his lane and make the necessary changes.
I think one thing that's really interesting about his story is the business partners that he started working with early on. So he describes how, you know, it was over a decade. He was working alongside these two guys who were of a very different mentality than him, in terms of, like, he described it as they were very tough mentally. Like, they were very like, we expect the best out of you. Don't act like an employee, act like an owner, and we'll make you an owner at some point. And so he describes how they had a huge influence in him. And I have seen that story, that aspect of that story, repeat in a lot of people's lives that are successful, where if they found themselves with a lack of ambition and discipline, or a lack of whatever qualities that were necessary to be successful, the one thing that they did that made all the difference was to surround themselves with people that did. And by just being around those people, they over time could get those qualities. I think it's actually really tough to just choose a quality and then start to live it. I think it's much more practical to write down the quality that you want, to find someone who definitely has it, and then spend as much time as possible with that person. I think you do become the people you hang out with, and I don't think you become more like them. I think you become them. I think you really, really become the people you spend the most time with, and you become the media that you take in. Definitely. If you are taking in just, fear, then you become fearful. A lot of the people that I like to listen to very intentionally is people who believe that they can change and that they can grow. And so their mentality just naturally seeps into mine. And so as I listen, I just naturally develop the mentality of, I can change, and I'm not a victim to my environment. do not take your cue from circumstances ever. If everything around you is saying you should be happy or you should be sad or you should be whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, don't take the cue from the circumstances, because whatever is happening right now does not need to reflect what happens next.
Yeah.
And from
100%.
the linear, logical kind of society that we live in, we are so ingrained in cause and effect
Yep.
that, cause and effect is just like blindly worshipped at this point, where it's like, oh, if I've been in this situation, then I'm probably going to be in this other situation that looks very similar tomorrow, And yes, that is true. Obviously, cause and effect is a real thing, but I think people misunderstand it when it comes into play in their lives, because a human being can go through an unbelievable transformation in just a few months.
Yep.
And the belief that change is impossible or not likely to happen to me, it's a huge barrier. It's a huge barrier. And I think if people kind of took on the belief system of, actually, the situation that I'm in right now does not have to affect what happens like tomorrow at all. Like, at all.
Yeah.
Then that opens you up. That opens you up to really imagine a life that you want to live without referencing your past or your current moment. And so that's real imagination, without referencing what's happening now. You're imagining something that doesn't exist. And then once you can see it clearly, then I think that's when the magic starts to happen, where you can go, why can't I go there? Why can't that world be my world?
And one of the beautiful things, there are many negative things about our current state of social media and media in general, right? The amount of information we have at our fingertips, there's good and bad, right? But one of the beautiful things is that we have so many examples, right? We can find so many examples of people that were in shitty situations.
Yeah.
Name your situation.
Yeah.
Grew up in poverty or raped or this or that, like you name it, or was refugee and stuck in the middle of, in the boat in the middle of the whatever ocean, right? Like, so many people have overcome those things.
Yeah.
And so now we have fewer excuses than ever to stay in our current situation.
Yeah.
Because there's so many examples of people that said, hell no.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to be defined by the fact that that person raped me, or the fact that my parents could never find a way out of poverty, or the fact that I had to leave a country because of war.
Yeah.
Or again, name your thing. There's no excuses anymore. And I'm not downplaying how horrible it is to be in any of those situations. It sucks. And I sort of wouldn't blame you if you did want to stay there, because I can't imagine some of those situations, like just how bad you feel. But you don't have to. There's plenty of examples. I mean, if Malala Yousafzai could get shot in the face by Taliban and then still get out of there and now become an advocate for girls all over the world, you can buck up and move past your thing. So
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's use media to that end to learn more.
Yeah.
And to expose ourselves to more people that have overcome shitty things to go on and do amazing things.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Someday you're going to die. Many, many years from now. But inevitably it will happen. Death rate is still 100% last time I checked. And
For now.
For now, exactly. For now. Elon Musk, come on. I'm going to give you a eulogy. For some odd reason, I've been chosen to give you a eulogy. A huge number of people are gathered to celebrate and mourn your life. Equal parts celebration and mourning, because it sucks that Enis is gone, but did a lot of great things while he was here. Again, I've been asked to give a eulogy. What do you hope that I would say on that day about your life and legacy?
I don't know what the specific words would be, but I would like or hope that the essence of it conveys that I didn't treat people as a means to an end, and that I didn't live life on autopilot, and I guess above all, that in every interaction with me, that whatever I was interacting with, whether it be a flower on a sidewalk or a human being, that it was somehow benefited.
It's a beautiful life and legacy. I hope that is true.
Thank you.
This has been fun.
Yeah.
Thank you, Enis Cirak, founder of Gigamunch and Badass Human. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you,
Maybe
man.
we'll do round 2 someday. But for now, I think you've shared some really great stuff with us, and I can't wait to share it with everybody.
I really appreciate that. Really, today's been really fun, and you have a way of, I think, taking people in a space where they feel very comfortable to share, and just, I don't know, the questions you've asked were really great. Really appreciated this. Hope we can do it again.
Thanks. It's been fun. As always, thank you so much for tuning into the podcast today. I hope you are encouraged by my conversation with Enis Cirak. Here is today's takeaway and challenge for you. 99% of the people listening to this podcast do not live in or around Middle Tennessee, where I currently live. So you won't be able to enjoy Gigamunch meal anytime soon. But you can do this same thing in your community. Here's an idea or a couple of ideas. You most likely have immigrants or refugees living very close to you. Get to know them. Show deep and real interest in learning more about them, their country, their customs, their food, etc. And I bet they would feel very honored if you asked them to teach you how to cook some of their food. And don't be that person and make them pay for it. Pay for the supplies, the ingredients, and help them prepare this feast. I'm sure there are many takeaways from this conversation, but this is the one that sticks out most for me. So do that. And if you do that, let me know. I want to hear stories. I want to hear feedback from you if you decide, take that leap, get to know people that aren't just like you, because the more you get to know them, you'll realize that they are just like you. To find more information about this podcast conversation and all things Let's Give a Damn, go to letsgiveadamn.com. If you love what we're doing, tell a friend, or maybe leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, or consider giving us a few dollars each month to support the production and execution of this show by visiting patreon.com/letsgiveadamn. This podcast, as always, was edited and produced by the incredible Chad Snavely. The music is by the equally incredible Propaganda. See you all next week. Big week next week. I'll tell you why then. See you all next week. Peace.